The one who came in instead of meth lobby camera caught me walking into my building at 11:47 p.m. The problem is, at 11:47 p.m. was home, in bed, and had already been asleep for 2 hours. My name is Ian. I'm 34, and I found this out the most mundane way possible. The property management company sends all the tenants a link to the security footage archive after someone spray painted the elevator walls one night, asking if anyone had noticed anything suspicious over the past week. I opened the archive out of boredom, scrolling through Monday evening's footage, which, according to my own memory, went exactly the way it always does. I got home around 9, ate dinner, watched a show, and went to bed a little after 11. And there, on the lobby door camera, time-stamped 11:47 p.m, I see myself. The same jacket hanging in my hallway right now, the same slightly hunched walk, dragging my left foot just a little, the way I always have since an old knee injury. My face, clear enough on the camera to recognize instantly. The person on the footage walks into the lobby, heads for the stairwell, not the elevator, specifically the stairs, even though I always take the elevator, and disappears from the second floor camera's frame, apparently heading up toward my apartment on the 5th floor. I rewatched the clip probably 20 times. I told myself the footage quality was bad, that it was just some neighbor in a similar jacket. But the more I watched, the clearer it became. That walk was mine, not similar, mine, down to the exact hitch in the left step that only someone who's lived with that limp for years would recognize. The jacket was mine, with the specific fraying on the right cuff, where I always catch it on my car door handle. I checked the camera on my own floor's landing, but there was nothing there, not a single frame of the person from downstairs stepping out of the stairwell, as if he'd climbed to the 5th floor and simply stopped existing somewhere between the 2nd floor and my door. I told myself it was a system glitch, a recording bug, anything rational. I even considered that maybe I'd gone out in some kind of sleepwalking state and just didn't remember. People do things in their sleep they don't recall in the morning. I'd read about that. Maybe I'd gone downstairs, out onto the street for some reason, and just forgotten. The problem was, I live alone, and my apartment door was locked with every lock exactly as I'd left it when I woke up the next morning, locked the way only lock it from inside the apartment. If I'd gone out and come back, the deadbolt would have been set differently. I always lock my door a specific way, turning the key to full turns and then checking it once more by hand, a habit since childhood. That morning the lock was exactly as I'd left it before bed, well before 11:47, which meant I hadn't gone out, but someone who looked exactly like me had been climbing the stairs toward my apartment at the exact moment I was, by all evidence, sound asleep inside it. I decided it was a coincidence and bad memory, and tried to let it go, but 3 days later, it happened again. This time I checked the cameras that same evening, as soon as I got home, and I saw the same thing, myself, walking into the lobby at 10:15 p.m, even though I'd been at work late that whole evening and hadn't gotten home until close to midnight, which my co-worker could confirm, since we'd stayed late on a report together and left the office at the same time. I started digging through the footage archive for previous months. The property company kept records for a decent stretch, and as a tenant I'd been given temporary access for the vandalism investigation. I found for more similar incidents over the past 2 months. Always late evening, always a figure identical to me, climbing the stairs instead of taking the elevator. always vanishing between floors without a single frame of stepping out onto a landing. I started keeping something like a journal, noting where I'd actually been at each of those moments. In 3 cases I had an airtight alibi. At work, at a friend's place, once even in another city for a conference. In 2 cases, I'd apparently been asleep at home by my own recollection, but I couldn't prove that to anyone, including, increasingly, myself. I told my girlfriend, Claire, about it. She was skeptical. Understandably, she guessed someone was deliberately impersonating me, maybe knowing my schedule, possibly to commit some kind of crime under my identity and pin it on me. That sounded more plausible than anything I'd managed to come up with myself, and it calmed me down, at least for a while. We decided to test it together. The following Friday, when the pattern repeated again, it seemed to happen roughly every few days. Claire and I sat in my apartment, both wide awake, waiting to see what would happen. Her phone read 11:40 p.m. when the buzzer rang from the intercom downstairs. I walked over to the intercom screen. On the small, grainy display was the standard lobby camera feed, and there, at the door, stood me, looking directly into the intercom camera, as if it knew exactly who'd be watching. And when Claire was standing right beside me and saw the same thing I did, not through some camera archive, but live, in real time, on the screen in my own apartment, she went pale and grabbed my arm. "That's you," she whispered. "Ian, that's definitely you, or something that looks exactly like you." I didn't press the buzzer to let it in. The figure on the screen stood there a few more seconds, then, still staring into the camera, as if it knew we were watching and listening, said a single word, clearly enough that the intercom speaker carried it through. "Let me in." The voice was mine, completely, down to the exact intonation. The same voice I hear on my own voicemail recordings. The same voice I speak with every single day. Claire recoiled from the screen, and I stood there frozen, caught somewhere between terror and an absurd, animal curiosity. The figure on the screen waited patiently, as if it knew I'd eventually crack. I did crack, not because I wanted to let this thing in, but because I desperately needed to understand what was happening. And the only way to understand was to see it up close myself, not through a grainy intercom screen. I left Claire in the apartment, telling her to lock herself in if anything went wrong, and went downstairs the same way it always came up, the stairwell, when I stepped into the lobby. The front door was propped slightly open, and the figure, me, stood with its back to me, facing out into the darkness of the street. "Hey," I said, trying to sound steadier than I felt. "Who the hell are you?" The figure turned slowly. It was my face, completely, down to the smallest detail. The same scar above my eyebrow from a childhood bike accident, the same mole on my left cheekbone, the same eye color. But there was something subtly wrong about it, a kind of stillness, like the expressions didn't change naturally, but switched in abrupt jumps, like frames on an old reel of film. "You weren't supposed to come down here," it said, in my own voice, without a trace of threat in the tone, almost matter of fact. "Usually people just let me in. It's simpler for everyone." "Who are you?" I asked again, feeling ice-cold dread crawl under my skin. "I'm what was supposed to happen to you," the figure answered, tilting its head at a strange, unnatural angle. "Every life leaves a shadow behind it, made of the decisions that never got made, the roads you didn't take. Usually those shadows just stay shadows, but sometimes, in certain places, at certain times, they find a way out." I didn't understand a single word it was saying, but every cell in my body was screaming at me to run. Instead, transfixed, I asked, "Why do you keep coming here? What do you want?" "The same thing you want," it said. And this time, there was something almost like sadness in its voice. My voice. A place, a life, a body that doesn't have to keep sharing existence with a version of itself that will never become real unless one of us stops existing. It took a step toward me, and I backed up toward the stairs, sensing the conversation had crossed into dangerous territory. "Every time I climb these stairs instead of you," it continued, "I become a little more real, and you become a little less. Haven't you noticed lately how you've started forgetting things? How sometimes you can't remember what you did the night before?" I went cold, because it was true. Over the past month I'd had real gaps in my memory. I chalked it up to exhaustion, work stress, but standing there in front of this thing, I realized the gaps lined up, day for day, with those exact incidents on the camera footage. "This can't go on forever," it said, taking another step forward. "Sooner or later, only one of us is going to be left. I'd rather it happen peacefully, while you're still capable of understanding that." I turned and ran up the stairs, taking them two at a time, hearing behind me the exact same footsteps as my own, perfectly in sync, as if something wasn't chasing me so much as running alongside me in perfect mirror image. I burst into the apartment, slammed the door, threw every lock, and Claire, seeing my face, didn't ask a single question. She just helped me push the hallway cabinet in front of the door. The knocking started almost immediately, not frantic, not desperate, but calm, patient, exactly 3 knocks with even pauses, repeating over and over. We didn't open the door all night. By morning the knocking had stopped, and when we finally worked up the nerve to look, there was no one there. 5 weeks have passed since then. I moved in with Claire, leaving my apartment empty. I'm technically still on the lease, but I haven't spent a single night there since. The memory gap stopped as soon as I quit living there, which I attribute either to my nerves settling down, or to something I'd rather not put into words. Sometimes I still log into that property management camera portal, just to check. Over the last 3 weeks, a figure identical to me has climbed those same stairs twice, heading toward my empty apartment, still vanishing from frames somewhere between the 2nd floor and the 5th. What it's doing in there, in an empty apartment I no longer set foot in, I don't know, and honestly, I don't want to, but sometimes, at night, lying next to Claire, I find myself thinking clearly about something I'd rather not think about at all. If this thing really does become more real every time it takes my place, then sooner or later, it won't need an empty apartment anymore. It'll start looking for me here. And I'm not entirely sure I'd be able to tell, with any confidence, which one of us opens the door